There's a pretty scary survey done about what jobs people most often have when they file for divorce. Now, they looked at 3 of the top jobs for women and 3 of the top jobs for men. When I'm talking about this video, I mean, when I'm talking about the women's side, I mean, they were the ones who filed for divorce. This was the profession they had. When I do the men's side, it was the men who filed for divorce and the jobs they had, okay? Every time I do these videos, people get really upset because this is a generalized survey, okay? This is not my opinion. This is facts that are out there. You can Google them and find them for yourself. Everybody thinks I'm talking about Kathy that works at the elementary school in Pottsville, okay? I'm not talking about you, Kathy. It's just a generalized statement. First off, this is going to sound like I'm doing hate speech. It is not. It's just a fact of the world. 72% of all divorces are initiated by the woman in their relationship. 72% of all divorces initiated by the wife. And when they take a survey about all these men that wanted to file for divorce but never did, but their wife eventually did file for the divorce, when they ask the man, hey, you were unhappy for multiple years, why didn't you go ahead and file a divorce? It is almost always due to alimony and child support. They're like, I can't afford it. It's cheaper to keep her, as they say. The number one occupation, both man and woman, this is the number one occupation for somebody filing divorce on the women's side, but this is overall the number one. Stay-at-home moms. Stay-at-home moms file for divorce at a rate of 3 to 1 of a woman that has a job. Go ahead, blast me in the comments. I know it's coming. Stay-at-home wives, apparently the reasoning why, when they started looking into the reason why, is it's almost always idle hands. They feel like their husbands never show them enough attention. You know, I'm not even going to get into it. I'm just leaving it there. Just know if you're a dude at work and your wife stays at home, you already have a 3 times more likely chance of getting a divorce. Number 2 is nurses and doctors. Female doctors and female nurses are like, I mean, it's like 50% straight down the middle, and the overall divorce rate is about 50%. So I mean, that's pretty on track. But any kind of doctor or nurse, a lot of times the study showed it's because of how long they are away from their spouses, and a lot of times they're away from their spouses overnight if they work that night shift. And you're going to come at me sideways for this one, but number 3, women-initiated divorces are teachers, especially if they teach high school, okay? This crosses over a little bit to professors as well, like if they're teaching college, but high school female teachers file for divorce at a crazy rate. And studies show, and this is weird, it's twisted, take it for what you will. I'm not saying they're interested in their teenage students, but because they're around so much testosterone all the time, they're around such youthful men and boys all the time, it seems like there is like they mostly file for divorce and weirdly enough remarry a much younger man. Not saying that they're like going after the students. It's just like a subconscious thing where they start wanting a younger man. Don't come after me. That is what this survey and study proved, that a lot of these teachers that taught high school would file for divorce. And then when they did get remarried, they remarried a significantly younger man. Now, little side note here. I thought that men, because we're on the men jobs now, I thought that men filing for divorce would be number 1 military. Men in the military are the number 1 getting divorces. Now, their spouses have a various of jobs, but a lot of those jobs belong to stay-at-home moms. Once again, don't come at me. It's just the fact. Men in the military have a hugely high ratio of getting a divorce from their spouse. So now let's talk about the men initiating the divorces. Well, number 1 is absolutely no shocker. It is any kind of bartender, any type of, they group this in with casino workers for some reason, but any kind of like nightlife employee. If they work at a club, if they're a bouncer, if they're a bartender, they kind of grouped all of these things together. So essentially nightlife employee. That's absolutely no shocker. You're already at where the cheating mostly takes place at. Number 2, they kind of lump this together. It's any kind of emergency responders. So police officers, firefighters, ambulance workers, EMSs. Number 2, extremely high rate. And a lot of this is due to a lot of the police officers working those overnight shifts, or they're working a shift where their time is kind of unaccounted for. It is an extremely alarming rate on how many police officers will just blatantly cheat on their spouses while they're on shift. Okay, firefighters, same way. They, stay overnight at the station. If there's not a fire, their time is essentially completely unaccounted for, especially like in smaller towns and stuff. And then talking about ambulance and EMS workers, I have no idea I don't know enough about them to know what's going on. I couldn't really find a good answer when I was looking at this survey and this study. Maybe it has something to do with that the work really closely with their partners. I have no idea why the ambulance are on there. But the police officers are the majority of that trifecta. The firemen's a lot lower. The EMS is a lot lower. They just kind of lump those all together. Police officers, though, crazy, out of this world high divorce rate, filing against their wives. Number 3 is like any commission-based salesman, especially car salesman. And I used to be in the car world for a long time. I can attest to this. they call it the down payment cheating date. Okay, so essentially, a girl comes in, she needs a little bit of a down payment, and a salesman will offer to make that little deal. It's dirty, it's sleazy, it's nasty. I have seen it for myself at least 10 times. Okay, if you got a car salesman boyfriend, car salesman husband, just know that they might not do that. Obviously not. But the opportunity will be there at least once a month. At least once a month, a girl will essentially throw themselves at the salesman, kind of giving them that wink. I'll do anything if you can make this car deal happen. I need this car deal for work. The case that I saw that sticks with me the most is we had a woman that came in one time that had just got a divorce from her very wealthy husband, and she had a car that she got stuck with, and she could not afford the payment. She needed to trade it in for a cheaper car. They wanted some money down, and she threw herself at our finance director and it was for like $2,000, and they made an arrangement that lasted months. I mean, it was crazy. It was nuts. Did you know that we can find sociopaths and psychopaths as early as 5 or 6 years old? We can do this by several physical traits that almost all serial killers have in common, as well as doing scans in the brain that tell us if there's a glucose serotonin imbalance. Okay, they deem this unethical, so they don't do it. Because those people could be treated completely different. And being a sociopath or a psychopath is not illegal. It's when you cross the threshold to what most people know them as serial killers. Okay? Not every psychopath and not every sociopath is going to be a serial killer. These people are mostly pretty toxic in their life and in the world that surrounds them. But that's not a criminal to be a crappy person or a very aggressive person, okay? There are several physical traits you can look for. Here's a list of 23 of them. You can pause this video if you want to, because this list is going to go away real quick. I'm going to talk about 5 of the ones that you can see real quick, okay? The first one is called Sampuku eyes, or what's called the 3 white eyes. It's where you can see the whites of somebody's eyes on their left side, their right side, and underneath. In some rare cases, you can see it above the pupil, but if you notice right now, you can only see the left and right side white. You can't see it underneath. A famous example of a celebrity that has this is Aubrey Plaza, and she is known for her cynical, dry humor, which is another thing that is shared amongst sociopaths and psychopaths, is a very, very dark, cynical, dry humor. Okay, the next physical trait you can look for is a simian line on somebody's hand. Everybody has this line that goes right above, above your palm, kind of below your fingers. If this line goes all the way across, that is a heavily common trait that all serial killers and sociopaths have. Most people's goes about 3/4 of the way before it tapers down. Next is enlarged canines, and I already know I'm going to get the comments in the videos. I have the enlarged canines. If you have a couple of the traits, it's not a big deal. But they say if you have more than 5 of these 23 traits, that you are definitely on the scale of being a sociopath or a psychopath to some degree. The more of these traits you have, the more likely you are to be like the next Ted Bundy, okay? Now, the next thing is the toes. The third toe is even with the second toe. Scientifically, genetically, your toes are supposed to staircase down. Some people have a second toe that's longer than their big toe. That just means you have a type A personality. But having a third toe that's even with your second toe can mean that you are on the course to have one of these traits here. The next one is going back to the hand. If you do your fingers like this, your pinky finger with all your other fingers should be going straight up and down. But anybody who has a curved inward pinky finger, where their pinky finger kind of curves back in towards the other 4, that is another thing on here. This list, once again, like I said, go back and pause it if you want to read through all those 23 traits. It's up there. It's actually a really neat read. They did this study back in the 70s all the way to the 90s, where they actually went around to all the prisons and we studied all the serial killers that we had, like in jails and stuff. And they found that they had a ton of physical traits in common. Now, a lot of people say, well, like, if we can spot this, why shouldn't we do something about it? It's because it is not a crime to be a sociopath or a psychopath, okay? It's just, you should have your flags up when you know these people that have all these traits, okay? We have other mental disabilities and physical handicaps that share common traits, and we acknowledge that. But there's a fine line of why science doesn't want to acknowledge something that could be viewed so objectively. Like if you for sure got scanned when you were 6 years old and a scientist said, hey, that kid's a psychopath. Do you think his parents would treat him the same? His family would treat him the same? People would be afraid of him? They don't want to put that label out there, okay? Now, what does a psychopath mean exactly scientifically? It means that they have this glucose serotonin imbalance. So, guys, if you didn't know this, your body provides you with glucose, okay? It actually goes to the stomach. A lot of mental disabilities actually come from the stomach if you didn't know that. So glucose will go down to the stomach. It will actually help with produce serotonin, and it will break down all the stress in your life, all the, the anger, that you have, the anguish. People who don't have that, it just builds and builds and builds. Well, eventually it bubbles up and they just feel like they're going to explode. And they have to do something extreme to make their brain produce serotonin to have that release, okay? Your adrenaline junkie buddies that like to go bungee jumping and skydiving, they're not much different than a psychopath or a sociopath, okay? Because that's their way of release. They have to do some extreme measure to make their brain release serotonin, okay? While your other people might go down the route of being a very violent person, a serial killer, another type of criminal. They have to do some kind of extreme thing to get that brain to make that serotonin. Important keynote there. I talked about how like glucose goes to the stomach and it produces serotonin and all this stuff. Okay. Serial killers, because they don't have that, are also known to have extremely bad acid reflux. Like, because that system ain't working the right way, they are known to get really bad heartburn and acid reflux. So keep that in mind if somebody else has those physical traits. Now, this gene is actually called the MAOA gene, and you can test for it yourself. You can go get tested. You can buy a kit to test for it. 99% of society does not have this gene. But if you have that gene, doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be a serial killer. But it does mean that you shouldn't be around sharp objects very often when you're upset. Thing we're going to talk about with the mindset of known serial killers, okay? A male serial killer has been known, which female serial killers are very, very, very rare. A male serial killer is a lot less picky on his victims, okay? It's more of a, it's convenient almost. Where they have proven that female serial killers, once they have made their mind up on a target and once they have picked a target, there is nothing that is going to get them to divert from that target until that target is gone. Female serial killers are a whole different breed. They're very calculated, they're very cold, and they almost never do it directly. I don't know what kind of danger I was in, but me and my wife were definitely in some severe danger in this random neighborhood inside of Dallas, Texas. This happened about 6 years ago. Me and my wife were actually going to pick up this puppy from a puppy mill that was getting busted up, and we still have him. His name's Arlo. But we pulled into this random gas station, and it was in some neighborhood in Dallas. Not sure exactly where we were at. It's been 6 years ago. But we pulled in. It was kind of a sketchy-looking gas station. It was kind of older and run down. But there was like a ton of people in the parking lot. And as soon as I pull in, everybody's, they stopped talking and doing what they're doing. They look right at the car. But I had to pee, and there was no holding it. And we hadn't seen another gas station in a minute. And we were like right around the corner from the place that we were going to. So I opened the car door, and I haven't even got out of the car yet, but the second my car door's open, somebody yells out to me. They're like, "Do you know where you are?" I didn't even realize if they were talking to me at first. I just knew they were looking in my direction, but I thought maybe they're not talking to me. My wife doesn't want to get out of the car at all. She stays in the car and locks the door behind me. I go in, and as I'm going in, everybody's looking at me. I know they're talking about me. As I go in, literally the clerk of the gas station said, "Do you know where you are? You shouldn't be here." What have you. I go to the restroom. I can openly hear them talking about me in the gas station because there was a person standing on the other side of the counter talking to the clerk. And as I come out, I was going to get an energy drink and like a Hershey bar, just some little snack. This was, like I said, late at night. It's about 9 o'clock, and we had a 3.5 hour drive after we picked up this puppy. So we were going to be up for a while. And the clerk was like, "No, you're not buying nothing. You need to go. You need to get out of here." Now, I should mention that almost everybody that was inside this gas station and outside of this gas station were women. A mix of races, because I know that's something that a lot of people are going to ask me. There was a mix of races there, but it was mainly women. There was probably 8 to 9 women and probably 3 or 4 dudes. And no one made any direct threats at me. They were just like, "Do you know where you are? You shouldn't be here." But no one was like, "We're going to hurt you." So I don't know what we walked into or what we drove into. I don't remember what brand of gas station this was. If it was a Exxon or a 7-Eleven, I don't remember. But I just can't help but wonder, I got out of there quick. We were going to get gas and everything. The clerk told me, "Don't buy anything, just go." I don't know if there was some kind of sting operation that was about to go down. I don't know if there was a bunch of women there with a few guys, because that was pimps and prostitutes. I don't know if that was some kind of gang territory. Maybe I was wearing the wrong color. I don't know. It was just so strange and so weird that, the second I got there, I didn't talk to nobody. I tried not to look at nobody. And immediately we were met with what I felt was aggression, even though there was no direct threats. So if anybody's from that Dallas area or is from a bigger city that has similar stuff, because I'm a country guy. I live out in the middle of the sticks, So to me, I don't perceive threats like that. I don't really perceive you know, my head's always on a swivel and I'm always alert, obviously. But like, to me, I don't go into a situation thinking like, oh yeah, this like, I shouldn't be here. Like, cause to me, anybody should be able to go anywhere. So maybe drop in the comments, tell me what you guys think was going on. What did I walk into? What did I potentially could have had go wrong? Like, was I about to be kidnapped? Was I about to be carjacked? Was I about to be just straight up murdered? You know, what was going on there? You know, in your opinion. This is how my friend Sam got stuck in the country of Chad in Africa for 12 years. Now, before we do that, in the comments, you can buy our Nothing Says Oklahoma Like Coyotes and Butt Plugs t-shirt that everybody's been asking for. You can also buy our original Nomads Animal Encounter shirts. Click that link in the comments there or in the bio. All right, so let's get right into this story about how this guy that I met named Sam was stuck in Chad in Africa for 12 years, okay? I used to work at a car dealership, and we used to have this customer that would come in all the time, and he would always get service work there. And I decided one day I was going to sit down and just talk to him, you know, see why he comes in all the time, because he came in a lot. Like, he was super meticulous about his vehicle. He was an older guy. He was probably like in his 60s or so. And I got to know him over the course of a couple years. And one day, I don't know what compelled him to tell me his life story about how this happened to him, but he did. And I'm so glad he did. So essentially, Sam, which I don't know his traditional name, I believe he was from somewhere in Nigeria, was traveling with his family to a boat that was going to bring them to the United States. And this was in the 1980s. And on this boat, they were moving their whole life. Sam was a doctor over there. And he had a wife and a son. And they had a whole big house full of stuff that was all coming to the United States. His car, everything. So he had some, you know, some of his doctor office stuff to kind of tie up. His wife and son left about 2 days before he did with all of their belongings. Now, you got to remember, this is 1980s. No cell phones yet, okay? No internet yet. They'd already gone to America and picked out the location they were going to and all this other stuff. While he was going to the place where the ship was, I don't remember what country he was going to, but he had to pass through Chad, which is a country on the continent of Africa. And when he had to pass through Chad, back in the 1980s, it was extremely rough. I don't know how it is nowadays, but back then, I mean, it was considered a third world country. There was a lot of like guerrilla warfare going on there. There was a lot of, infighting there. And anyhow, he stayed in the hotel room. He was going to get up the next morning and continue his journey down. And he woke up in the middle of the night to AKs being, put in his face. And they robbed him of everything. And when I say everything, I mean his clothes, his passport, his, money, literally all of his paper documentation, everything. And like we stated before, this is 1980s. It's not as easy as popping on the computer and getting another one. There's no cell phones. You can't make a phone call. So my first question to him was, okay, dude, did you go to the police afterwards? And he said, no, and here's why. 1, I'm naked. 2, I'm in Chad. The police down there do not ask a whole lot of questions. He said, like, there was almost no kind of justice system. If you got thrown in jail or thrown in prison there's a good chance no one is ever going to come for you, especially since you had no documentation proving who you were. He had no paperwork with him, no light. They took everything, all of his IDs, they took it all. He had no money to buy new things. So he said for a few days he was afraid to go to the police because he just knew that it was going to be a situation where they might not ask any questions. They might just go ahead and throw him in jail. And then no one would ever get to hear from him ever. He did not know the new phone number of where he needed to call at to try to get a hold of his wife and his son that had already, came to the United States. So he was terrified. So he lived a few days essentially being homeless, stealing food, stealing the essentials, stealing a few things of clothes. And he lived this way for, around 2 weeks, he said. After that, he found some like kind of odds and end jobs where people didn't really ask a lot of questions. He was able to make a little bit of money going that way. And before he knew it, a whole year had passed. And he had no idea how he was going to get out of the situation. So one day he bit the bullet and he said, hey, I'm going to go try to, talk to the police and hopefully they'll just believe me. And when he went there, he said his biggest fear was realized. They immediately tried to throw him into a jail cell. And when one of the guards walked away, he just ran out the door and just never went back because they were going to hold him in a jail cell until they could get it figured out. And he was afraid that would be the rest of his life. So he did not want to go there at all. So he was on the run, essentially, for a few more years. He was trying to get back to his home country where he could talk to his family. But at this time, like I said, the roads were dangerous. There was a lot of fighting going on. There was a lot of people at the different borders. And so it was a real threat that he would just get, gunned down on sight without getting to talk to anyone or explain to anyone. And they could speak a different language than he speaks. That was also a big problem. Is there's humongous language barriers going on over there that he was trying to navigate and to cross. Fast forward about 6 years into him living like this, he meets a very wealthy man that he wanted to teach his children English, and so he had actually met Sam a few times from some place that Sam had an odd-end job. And then he noticed that Sam had really good English, and they would have conversations in English. And he said, "Hey, I'm a busy man. Can you teach my children English because we're about to move to the United States?" Sam said, "Okay, I think this is my way in." So he stayed with that family for years, teaching them fluent English. They would frequent the U.S. and come back and forth. He was terrified to tell this man, "Hey, I had this happen to me," because he was afraid that guy would turn him over or turn him in. I had this happen to me. This is how I've had to live for the past, decade at this point. Can you please do me a favor? And the next time you go to the United States, can you figure out a way to take me with you? The wealthy guy said, "Yes, you're essentially a member of my family at this point." And they smuggled him into the United States on a cargo ship. This was late 1990s. He got over here. He could not track down his wife and his son. I mean, you got to think it's been 12 years at this point. He could not find his wife and son. He just picks up life like normal. His career as a doctor is gone. It's out the wind. I mean, he is so far obviously out of practice, and all the licensing and everything else, it's gone. It's out of the wind. He still has no documentation of who he is. He still has no passport to be there in the United States. He definitely doesn't have any kind of like his immigration paperwork. Nothing. None of that. So now he's almost kind of in the same situation in the United States. He was able to eventually get it worked out. And fast forward modern times, Facebook comes out. He's able to find his wife and son on Facebook when he searched their names. And, obviously, what's coming. She obviously had remarried. Their son he was an adult. He had kids of his own. So this guy had grandkids he didn't know about. He had other, his son had other siblings with the new relationship that the wife had.
Where is Daredevil?
I'm right here. Don't miss the return of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again.
So what's next?
I feel liberated.
We're gonna take this city back.
Over medicated.
In an all-new season, now streaming only on Disney+.
They're hunting us. It's time we started hunting them.
I can work with that.
This should be tons of fun.
Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again, now streaming only on Disney+.
He was able to talk to them. They had a big family meeting and a big get-together. And unfortunately, they did look for him for a long time, but they didn't know where he went missing at. I mean, you're talking about a 1,000-mile journey that they didn't know, that crossed several countries, that they did not know where he went missing at. Because they did try to call different authorities and police stations and all this. But like I said, you're dealing with multiple language barriers. You're dealing with somebody that can't identify themselves. There was tons of refugees over there. There's tons of people who couldn't identify themselves already. So it was just a nightmare essentially. And after a long time, she gave up and just assumed that he had died or left the family, what have you. And I just thought that was one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard. And I don't know why it's not a movie. Like, I don't know, whoever needs to get in front of Sam and let him just tell you the full story with all the details. It would be one of the coolest movies I think imaginable out there. Don't forget to click the link in the comments or go to our bio on Facebook and get your Nothing Says Oklahoma Like Coyotes and Butt Plugs t-shirt. If you don't know what that's from, it was one of our all-time most favorite videos that people liked and commented and shared. Every time I meet people out in public that know me from our videos, they always bring that story up. I don't want to spoil it. If you haven't seen it, just search Coyote Butt Plug Oklahoma. I'm sure it's going to pop up.